My name is Bradford, and at 67 years old, I thought I understood what family meant. After building a business from nothing and enduring a painful divorce 15 years ago, I believed I had accepted my place in my daughter Amanda's life. That is, until last Christmas, when her text message appeared on my phone. "Please don't come for Christmas. We only want close family around." I simply replied, "No problem. Have fun." What she didn't know was that I had just moved into my brand new $12 million mansion. Where are you watching from today? Before I tell you how my holiday turned out differently than expected, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. You'll want to see what happened when those Christmas photos hit social media. I was born in a small Midwest town where most folks worked at the factory or on farms. My parents weren't poor by local standards, but we certainly weren't wealthy. Dad worked in manufacturing while Mom took care of the house and us kids. I was the youngest of three, with two older sisters who left town as soon as they graduated high school. I might have followed them if I hadn't met Elizabeth during my senior year. Elizabeth was beautiful, smart, and ambitious. We married young, just 19, against both our parents' wishes. They thought we should go to college first, but we were in love and convinced we could figure everything out together. I took a job at the local hardware store, while Elizabeth worked as a receptionist at the doctor's office. We rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment above the laundromat on 3rd Street, barely making ends meet but happy in our little bubble. When Elizabeth got pregnant with Amanda 2 years later, I knew I needed to provide better for my family. I had always been good with machines and sales, so when an opportunity came up to sell construction equipment at a regional dealer, I jumped at it. The hours were longer, and I had to travel across 3 states, but the commission structure meant I could finally start building something for us. Amanda was born in 1978, a beautiful baby girl with her mother's eyes, and what I like to think was my determined spirit. Those early years were challenging but sweet. Our apartment was cramped, money was tight, but we had love and dreams for the future. Every night, I'd come home exhausted but would still find energy to play with Amanda, reading her stories and making her giggle by pretending to be different animals. As the years passed, my career began to take off. I had a knack for understanding what my clients needed before they did, and my reputation grew. By the time Amanda was 7, I had been promoted to regional sales manager. We bought our first house, nothing fancy but with a yard where Amanda could play. Elizabeth decorated it beautifully, making it a warm and welcoming home. But my success came with a price I didn't recognize until it was too late. The more I achieved professionally, the more hours I spent away from home. Regional manager became division director, and suddenly I was overseeing sales teams across the Midwest. The money was great, but I was missing dance recitals and parent-teacher conferences. Elizabeth started making comments about raising Amanda alone. I thought she was exaggerating. After all, I was providing the lifestyle she had always wanted. When Amanda turned 15, the distance between Elizabeth and me had grown into a chasm. She had built her own life with her friends and community activities, while I was still climbing the corporate ladder. We became polite strangers, sharing a house and a daughter. I tried to connect with Amanda during my time at home, but she was a teenager with her own world of friends and interests. I'd attempt to ask about school or her activities, but my questions often fell flat. My knowledge of her life too outdated to ask anything meaningful. The divorce came when Amanda was 17. Elizabeth claimed I had chosen money over family, that I was never present emotionally or physically. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she never acknowledged how her coldness had pushed me further into work, creating a vicious cycle neither of us knew how to break. The divorce was bitter, with Elizabeth painting me as the villain who abandoned his family for career ambition. Amanda, hurt and confused, sided with her mother. From her perspective, I was the dad who missed her important moments and then disappeared into hotels and airports. Elizabeth had been the constant presence, the one who attended every school event and helped with homework. I couldn't blame Amanda for her choice, but it broke my heart all the same. I tried to maintain a relationship with Amanda through her college years. I paid for her education in full, sent birthday and Christmas gifts, and called regularly. Most of my calls went to voicemail. When we did speak, the conversations were strained and brief. I learned about her major and her grades, but nothing about her friends or dreams. She was polite but distant, fulfilling an obligation rather than seeking connection. Amanda met Justin during her junior year of college. He seemed like a good man, steady and kind. I wasn't invited to their small wedding ceremony, only learning about it afterward through a formal announcement in the mail. I sent them a generous gift and a heartfelt letter, receiving a brief thank you note in return. When my grandchildren were born, first Jack and then Lily 3 years later, I hoped for a new beginning. Perhaps being a grandfather would allow me to have the family connection I had missed. Elizabeth, now remarried to a local dentist, still maintained significant influence over Amanda. My access to my grandchildren was limited, and always on their terms. Christmas visits lasted exactly 2 hours. Birthdays were celebrated before or after the actual family gathering. I was permitted to see the children, but was never truly included. For years, I accepted this role as the outsider. I showed up when invited, brought thoughtful gifts, and never complained. I believed that any relationship with my family, however limited, was better than none at all. I swallowed my hurt when the children called Elizabeth's new husband Grandpa Mike, while referring to me formally as Grandfather Bradford. I smiled in family photos where I was positioned at the edge, easily croppable if they wished. All the while, my business continued to thrive despite my personal losses. I channeled my energy into building my company, expanding from sales into equipment leasing, and eventually manufacturing specialized parts. Work became both my distraction and my achievement, the place where my efforts were recognized and rewarded. Last year marked a turning point in my life. After decades of building my construction equipment business into a regional powerhouse, I received an unexpected acquisition offer from a national corporation. They wanted my company, my client base, and my expertise. The numbers they proposed were beyond anything I had imagined. $175 million, with a consulting contract for 3 years if I wished to stay involved. At 66, I had never seriously considered retirement. Work had been my constant companion, the place where I felt valued and successful. But as I reviewed the offer with my financial advisors and attorneys, I began to see it as an opportunity for transformation. Perhaps it was time to finally prioritize my own happiness after decades of work and rejection. The sale process took 6 months of intense negotiations and planning. Throughout it all, I maintained my normal contact with Amanda and her family, calling on schedule and sending my usual gifts. I mentioned being busy with some business changes, but shared no details. Amanda didn't ask for any. Our conversations remained as they had for years, pleasant but superficial, lasting exactly 12 minutes before she found a reason to end the call. Once the sale finalized and the money was transferred, I felt a strange combination of freedom and emptiness. What does one do after achieving the ultimate business success, but still feeling like a failure in what matters most? I decided to start by changing my physical surroundings. The 5-bedroom house in Chicago, where I had lived alone for 15 years after the divorce, held too many memories of phone calls not returned and holidays spent working. I hired a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties and began exploring options around the country. After looking at dozens of homes, I found it, a stunning modern mansion on the California coast near Santa Barbara. 8,000 square feet of architectural beauty perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the ocean horizon, a wine cellar, home theater, and a kitchen that would make professional chefs envious. The price tag was $12 million, an amount that would have seemed inconceivable to the young man who once counted pennies to buy diapers for his baby daughter. The purchase process moved quickly. I paid cash, waived contingencies, and closed within 30 days. Moving from Chicago to California was liberating. I kept very little from my old life, preferring to start fresh with furniture and decor that reflected this new chapter. The process of selecting every item for my new home was surprisingly enjoyable. For once, I wasn't making decisions based on practicality or business considerations, but simply on what brought me pleasure. By early December, I was settled in my new home. The holidays were approaching, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely excited about Christmas. I imagined hosting my first real celebration in my new home, perhaps beginning new traditions. Despite our strained relationship, I called Amanda with what felt like a meaningful invitation. "I've moved to California and bought a lovely home near Santa Barbara," I told her, deliberately understating the grandeur of my new residence. "I would love for you, Justin, and the children to come for Christmas this year. I could fly you all out first class, and you could stay as long as you like. The kids would love the pool and the beach." There was a long pause before Amanda responded, her voice carrying that familiar tone of rehearsed politeness. "That's nice, Dad, but we already have plans with Mom and Mike. You know we always do Christmas at their house. Perhaps you could come for part of the holiday?" I suggested, trying to keep the hope from my voice. "Even just for a few days after Christmas?" "It's not really a good time," she replied. "Jack has his winter swim program, and Lily has her dance recital. Maybe we can visit sometime in the summer." I recognized the deflection for what it was, the same vague promises that never materialized into actual visits. Still, I thanked her for considering it and wished her a happy holiday season. We ended the call with the usual platitudes, and I tried to ignore the heaviness in my chest. 3 days before Christmas, the text message arrived that would change everything. "Please don't come for Christmas. We only want close family around." I stared at those words for a long time, the implicit message crystal clear. After 15 years, I was still not considered close family. A complex wave of emotions washed over me as I read those words. Hurt, certainly, at being so explicitly excluded. Anger at the casual cruelty of the phrasing. But mostly, a profound sadness at the realization that my daughter still saw me as the workaholic father from years ago, a peripheral figure unworthy of inclusion in important family moments. I considered several responses. I could point out that I had moved across the country and had no plans to show up uninvited. I could express my hurt at being so blatantly excluded. I could remind her that I was her father and the children's grandfather, regardless of past mistakes. But in the end, I opted for dignity over confrontation. "No problem. Have fun," I replied, then set my phone aside. As I looked around my beautiful, empty mansion, I made a decision. I would not spend another Christmas alone, working or pretending the day wasn't happening. I would not wallow in rejection or self-pity. Instead, I would create new connections and traditions. If my biological family didn't want me, perhaps it was time to build a chosen family of friends and colleagues who valued my presence. With renewed determination, I began making calls to business associates who had become friends over the years, people I genuinely enjoyed, but had never prioritized due to work or failed attempts to connect with Amanda's family. I reached out to my attorney and his wife, who had recently mentioned having no holiday plans after their children decided to spend Christmas with their in-laws. I invited my financial advisor and his partner, who had been kind enough to include me in their 4th of July barbecue earlier that year. As the list of potential guests grew, I realized I wanted to do something more meaningful than simply filling my house with acquaintances. I wanted to create genuine joy and connection, to make this Christmas truly special for people who might otherwise have a difficult holiday. With just 3 weeks until Christmas, I threw myself into planning with the same energy and focus that had built my business. First, I hired Sophia, an experienced event planner recommended by my real estate agent. When she arrived at the mansion for our consultation, her eyes widened as she took in the soaring ceilings of the entryway and the panoramic ocean views. "Mr. Williams," she said, using my last name, despite my insistence on Bradford, "this space is magnificent. What kind of event are you envisioning?" "A Christmas celebration, unlike any I've hosted before," I explained. "Not a formal corporate event, but a warm, genuine gathering of people who might not otherwise have a special holiday." I shared my growing vision, to include not only my business associates and new California neighbors, but also families who had experienced hardship or estrangement. Sophia listened attentively, making notes and occasionally suggesting refinements to my ideas. "I know several families through my church who are going through difficult times," she offered. "Single parents, working multiple jobs, families with medical challenges, people new to the area without local connections." "Perfect," I said. "Please invite them, with one condition. No one should know about the house until they arrive. I want genuine connections, not people interested in seeing a mansion." Sophia smiled. "I understand completely. I'll simply tell them a client is hosting a Christmas gathering at his home in Santa Barbara." Over the next few days, my guest list grew to include an interesting mix of people. There was Thomas, a former competitor turned friend after we collaborated on an industry project. Recently divorced, he had mentioned having minimal holiday plans. Maria and Antonio, an elderly couple who had sold me a painting for my new home, whose children lived overseas and couldn't visit this year. Jamal and Denise, a young couple with 3 children who had recently moved to California for his medical residency, far from their extended families in Georgia. I also connected with a local charity organization that worked with families in transition. Through them, I invited 4 families who had overcome homelessness during the past year and were working to rebuild their lives. I made it clear to the charity director that this was not a charity event, but a genuine invitation to share a holiday celebration as equals. With the guest list taking shape, I turned my attention to making the experience memorable. I spent days personally shopping for gifts, not generic items to check boxes, but thoughtful presents matched to what I knew or learned about each guest. For children attending, I researched current interests and trends, wanting their eyes to light up when opening their packages. The mansion's transformation began 2 weeks before Christmas. Professional decorators arrived with ladders and tools, but I insisted on being involved in every decision. The 30-foot tree in the great room was adorned with hand-blown glass ornaments in blues and silvers, echoing the ocean visible through the windows. Garlands of evergreen and twinkling lights draped along the staircases and mantels. Outdoors, thousands of white lights illuminated the palm trees and pathways leading to the house. In quiet moments between preparations, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between the joy I was creating and the rejection that had sparked it. There was an undeniable sadness in knowing that my grandchildren would not see this magical setting, would not open presents beneath this magnificent tree. But there was also a growing sense of purpose in creating something meaningful from what could have been merely painful. The week before Christmas, I received a brief text from Amanda, with photos of Jack and Lily posing stiffly in front of Elizabeth's Christmas tree. "Happy holidays," the message read, as impersonal as a card sent to a distant acquaintance. I replied with warm wishes and compliments about how grown-up the children looked, keeping my response deliberately brief and positive. I attached no photos of my new home or decorations, respecting the boundary she had established while protecting myself from further rejection. In previous years, such a minimal interaction would have left me melancholy for days. This year, I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes to feel the hurt before returning to my holiday preparations with renewed focus. The past couldn't be changed, but the present and future were mine to shape. As Christmas Eve approached, I finalized arrangements for the culinary experience I wanted to provide. I hired Chef Daniel, known for his farm-to-table approach, to create a menu that would accommodate various dietary needs while offering both comfort and luxury. We planned a Christmas Eve buffet with interactive food stations and a formal sit-down dinner for Christmas Day, followed by a more casual evening of leftovers and board games. The first guests arrived on December 23rd, those traveling from further away or without local accommodations. I had prepared guest rooms with welcome baskets, plush robes, and personalized notes. The initial reactions to the mansion were everything I had hoped for. Gasps of surprise, wide eyes taking in the ocean view, excited explorations of the various spaces. Jamal and Denise's children, ages 4 through 8, approached the infinity pool with wonder before racing to the game room with its pinball machines and video game consoles. Maria and Antonio gravitated toward the library with its wall of books and comfortable reading chairs. Thomas immediately walked to the edge of the property, staring out at the Pacific Ocean with what looked like needed contemplation. That evening, as we gathered for a casual welcome dinner on the heated patio, I experienced something I hadn't felt in years: the warmth of being surrounded by people genuinely happy to be in my company. There was no underlying tension, no sense of being tolerated rather than welcomed, just good food, flowing conversation, and the beginning of new connections. Sarah, a single mother of twin boys who had recently secured stable housing after months in a shelter, touched my arm as I refreshed her drink. "Bradford," she said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you for this. My boys have never seen anything like this place. They keep asking if we're visiting a movie star." I smiled. "You can thank me by enjoying every moment. And please, tell your boys I'm just a regular person who worked hard and got lucky." As Christmas Eve dawned bright and clear, the remaining guests arrived throughout the morning. Children raced through the gardens, played in the game room, or splashed in the heated pool. Adults gathered in small conversational groups on the terraces or helped put final touches on decorations. There was an organic, evolving quality to how people mixed and connected, crossing ages and backgrounds with surprising ease. By evening, all 32 guests had arrived. We gathered in the great room for a casual ceremony of welcome. Standing beside the towering Christmas tree, I found myself momentarily emotional as I looked at the assembled faces. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "Some of you I've known for years, others I'm just beginning to know. But tonight, we're all sharing this Christmas together, creating something new and meaningful. Whether you're far from family by circumstance, choice, or geography, tonight we're all connected. Please make yourselves completely at home. This house is yours to enjoy." As the evening progressed with music, food, and conversation flowing freely, I observed with satisfaction how the children had formed immediate bonds, racing through the house in games of hide and seek. Adults who had arrived as strangers were exchanging phone numbers and making plans to stay in touch beyond the holiday. The mansion, for all its grandeur, felt alive and welcoming in a way I hadn't anticipated. Later that night, after helping tuck excited children into beds with promises that Santa would indeed find them here, I stepped out onto my bedroom balcony. The moon cast a silver path across the dark ocean, and the air carried the scent of salt and pine. For the first time in many Christmases, I felt genuinely at peace, even hopeful. Tomorrow would bring its own magic, different from what I had originally wished for, but perhaps exactly what I needed. Christmas morning arrived with the excited shrieks of children echoing through the mansion well before 7. I had been awake since 5, arranging the final touches in the great room where stacks of presents surrounded the massive tree. Each gift was carefully labeled, with no child or adult forgotten. I was pouring my first cup of coffee when Sarah's twins, Elijah and Noah, came barreling down the grand staircase still in their pajamas, their mother following behind with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about the early wake-up call," she said, stifling a yawn. "Not at all," I replied, genuinely delighted by their enthusiasm. Christmas morning should start with children's excitement. There's hot chocolate on the warming tray and coffee in the pot. Let's see what Santa brought, shall we? Word spread quickly through the house, and within 30 minutes, all the guests had gathered in various states of sleepy disarray. The children sat cross-legged on the plush carpet nearest the tree, barely containing their anticipation. Adults perched on sofas and armchairs, clutching mugs of coffee and tea, many looking surprised to find gifts with their names as well. "Before we begin," I announced, "I want to make one thing clear. There are no obligations attached to any gift. This is simply my joy in sharing Christmas with you all." What followed was 2 hours of controlled chaos as presents were distributed and opened. The children's reactions were everything I had hoped for. 8-year-old Lily from one of the charity families shrieked with delight at discovering the art supplies she had mentioned wanting during our brief introduction. Denise's youngest son hugged the stuffed dinosaur half his size, refusing to set it down even during breakfast. Teenagers who had arrived trying to look cool and disaffected couldn't hide their smiles as they unwrapped gaming consoles or trendy sneakers. The adults seemed equally moved, though many tried to protest that the gifts were too generous. Maria wiped away tears when she opened the first edition of her favorite poetry book. Thomas stared in disbelief at the rare scotch I remembered him mentioning years ago at a business dinner. Throughout the morning, guests naturally documented the celebration. Phones appeared to capture children's joyful expressions, the magnificent tree, the ocean view from the terrace. I thought nothing of it at the time, focused on ensuring everyone felt comfortable and included. By mid-morning, Chef Daniel and his team had prepared a spectacular brunch buffet in the dining room. Belgian waffles, made-to-order omelets, fresh fruit platters, and pastries offered something for every taste. Champagne and orange juice flowed freely for the adults, while children delighted in festive holiday punch served in plastic champagne flutes that made them feel grown up. As the day progressed, different activities unfolded throughout the property. Some guests relaxed by the pool. Others took walks along the private beach access path. A group gathered in the media room to watch classic Christmas movies, while several of the men gravitated toward the billiards room for friendly competition. In the kitchen, I found myself surrounded by several women who insisted on helping Chef Daniel prepare for the evening feast. There was something wonderfully normal about chopping vegetables and sharing cooking tips with Sarah and Maria, while Jamal's wife Denise entertained us with stories of holiday disasters from her childhood. Late afternoon brought everyone together again for the formal Christmas dinner. The long table in the dining room, extended to its full capacity, glittered with fine china, crystal, and silver candelabras. Chef Daniel had outdone himself with roasted prime rib, herb-crusted salmon, and an array of sides combining traditional favorites with gourmet touches. Standing to offer a toast before the meal, I felt a surge of emotion that caught me by surprise. I want to thank each of you for giving me the greatest gift possible this year, a house full of life and connection. When I purchased this home, I worried it might always feel too large, too empty. Today, it feels exactly right. The dinner conversation flowed easily, jumping between topics and across the table as new friendships continued to form. I noticed Jason, a technology executive I knew from business circles, deep in conversation with Marco, a construction worker who had brought his family after a year of housing insecurity. Their animated discussion about fishing revealed more common ground than their different backgrounds might have suggested. What I didn't realize during these joyful hours was how actively our celebration was being shared beyond the mansion's walls. Nadia, Jason's 16-year-old daughter, was something of a social media influencer with thousands of followers. Throughout the day, she had been posting short videos and photos, showcasing the mansion, the decorations, and the Christmas festivities. Her TikTok tour of the house, set to a popular Christmas song, was rapidly accumulating views and shares. Her caption, "Most amazing Christmas ever at my dad's friend's insane $12 million mansion in Santa Barbara," had caught the attention of not only her regular followers but also people from our hometown who recognized my face in the background of several shots. By evening, as we gathered in the great room for dessert and games, Nadia's content had spread through the social circles of several guests. Rebecca, who attended the same church as Elizabeth's sister, had forwarded the videos directly to Amanda with a message, "Isn't this your dad's new place? So gorgeous." Unaware of this digital ripple effect, I was fully present in the moment, teaching Jamal's children how to play chess on a hand-carved set positioned near the fireplace. The evening had transitioned into a comfortable, relaxed gathering. Some guests played board games. Others sang along as Thomas played Christmas carols on the grand piano. The younger children, fighting sleep despite the excitement of the day, were constructing elaborate blanket forts in one corner of the room. Around 9:30, just as Chef Daniel was serving his signature chocolate soufflés with peppermint ice cream, my phone began vibrating in my pocket. I ignored it initially, focused on ensuring everyone had dessert. When it buzzed for the third consecutive time, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to check who was so persistent on Christmas night. 3 missed calls from Amanda. As I stared at the screen in surprise, a text appeared. "Dad, please call me back. It's important." My heart raced with immediate concern. Had something happened to the grandchildren? Was there a family emergency? I quickly walked to my study for privacy and returned her call. Amanda answered on the first ring, her voice a complicated mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. "Dad? Is that really your house in Nadia's videos? That massive place on the ocean?" The question caught me off guard. "This was about my home?" "Yes," I replied simply. "I moved to Santa Barbara after selling the company." "How do you know Nadia?" "I don't," she said, her voice tightening. "Rebecca from Mom's church sent me the videos. Everyone's sharing them." "Why didn't you tell us about this?" "About selling the company?" I sank into my desk chair, suddenly tired. "I did mention selling the business and moving, Amanda. You didn't ask for details, and when I invited you all for Christmas, you said you were too busy." There was a long pause before she responded, her voice smaller now. "We had no idea you were living like this. The house is. It's like something from a magazine." "It's just a house," I said quietly, though I knew it was far more than that. It represented a new chapter, one I had tried to include her in before being explicitly uninvited. "The kids saw the videos too," Amanda continued. "Lily keeps asking why we aren't at Grandpa's castle for Christmas. Jack wants to know if they can swim in your infinity pool." I closed my eyes, imagining my grandchildren's faces as they discovered the home they could have experienced firsthand. "They're welcome any time," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "As are you and Justin." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear muffled conversation in the background, likely Amanda and Justin discussing what to say next. Finally, Amanda's voice returned, with a note I hadn't heard from her in years. "Uncertainty. Dad, would it be possible to visit after New Year's? The kids are on break until January 8th, and we could possibly fly out for a few days." The request sparked conflicting emotions. Joy at the prospect of having my family visit, suspicion about their sudden interest after seeing my wealth, and caution born from years of disappointment. "Of course," I replied, deciding to choose hope over cynicism. "I'd love to have you all. Just let me know the dates, and I'll arrange everything." "Dad?" Her voice caught slightly. "All those people in the videos, who are they?" "Friends," I said simply. "Some old, some new. People who wanted to celebrate Christmas together." As our call ended with tentative plans for their visit, I returned to the great room where the celebration continued unabated. Thomas caught my eye with a questioning look, but I smiled reassuringly. Whatever complications might arise from Amanda's sudden interest in reconnecting, they were tomorrow's concern. Tonight was for presence, not past or future. Later, as the house finally quieted with guests retired to their rooms, I stood alone on the main terrace. The Christmas lights reflected in the dark ocean below, and stars crowded the clear night sky. My phone buzzed once more with a final text from Amanda. "Dad, please don't be mad about the Christmas text. We just didn't know. Things are different now. See you soon." Different indeed, I thought, though not in the ways she might imagine. The difference wasn't in my address or bank account, but in my understanding of what truly created a home. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, I was grateful for the unexpected Christmas gift, the possibility of healing. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a pleasant blur. Most guests departed on December 26th, with warm embraces and promises to keep in touch. A few stayed longer, including Thomas, who had nowhere pressing to return to, and Sarah with her twins, who were enjoying their first true vacation in years. Throughout this time, Amanda and I exchanged several texts finalizing their visit. They would arrive on January 2nd and stay for 5 days. I arranged for first-class flights, a rental car, and prepared the East Wing guest suite with separate bedrooms for the children. Each message from Amanda carried an undercurrent of newfound deference that left me with mixed feelings. Was this genuine interest in reconnecting, or simply attraction to my newly visible wealth? The remaining guests departed on New Year's Day, leaving the mansion strangely quiet after the week of celebration. I spent the day preparing for my family's arrival, both practically and emotionally. I stocked the kitchen with foods I remembered the children enjoying, set up the game room with age-appropriate activities, and mentally braced myself for whatever this visit might bring. When their car pulled into the circular driveway the following afternoon, I stood in the open doorway fighting contradictory urges to either rush forward or maintain a protective distance. Amanda emerged first, looking both familiar and strange. At 39, she resembled her mother more than ever, with the same careful posture and watchful eyes. Justin followed. Then the children tumbled out with the unbridled energy of youth. 10-year-old Jack spotted me first. "Grandfather Bradford," he called, using the formal title that had always created distance between us. Lily, 7 now, and missing her front teeth, hung back slightly, surveying the house with wide eyes. "Welcome," I said, stepping forward to greet them. "I'm so glad you could come." The words were simple but sincere. Despite everything, they were my family, and some part of me had been waiting 15 years for this moment. The initial tour of the house was accompanied by appropriate exclamations of awe. Justin, who worked in middle management at an insurance company, seemed particularly stunned by the scale and luxury. "This is incredible, Bradford," he said, running his hand along the marble countertop in the kitchen. "You must have done very well with the company sale." "Better than expected," I acknowledged, not wanting to discuss specific numbers. "Would you like to see the grounds before dinner? There's a path down to a small private beach." The children's initial reserve dissolved completely at the mention of the beach. Within minutes, they were racing across the manicured lawn toward the ocean, Justin following close behind. Amanda lingered, moving through the great room with slow, deliberate steps. "You have photos of us," she said quietly, noticing the silver frames displayed among art pieces on the built-in shelves. She picked up one showing her college graduation, another of the children as toddlers. "Where did you get these?" "Your mother would occasionally send photos, especially when the children were babies," I explained. "The more recent ones came from the Christmas and birthday cards you've sent over the years." She nodded slowly, replacing the graduation photo with careful precision. "I didn't know you kept them all." "Of course I did," I replied simply. "You're my daughter. They're my grandchildren." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, filled with 15 years of limited contact and carefully maintained distance. Finally, Amanda gestured toward the terrace where Justin and the children were visible in the distance. "Should we join them?" I nodded, relieved to postpone the inevitable, more difficult conversation. The afternoon passed pleasantly enough as the children explored the property with the unfettered joy that only kids can exhibit. Lily shrieked with delight when discovering the hidden garden with its small koi pond. Jack immediately began calculating how many of his friends back home could fit in the swimming pool. Dinner that evening was served on the patio, prepared by the private chef I'd retained after Christmas. The children chattered about school and friends, while the adults maintained a careful conversation about safe topics. The unusually warm California winter, Justin's recent promotion, my new interest in sailing. It wasn't until the children had been tucked into bed that the real conversation began. We gathered in the living room with its panoramic ocean views, now darkened to a canvas of distant lights from boats and neighboring coastal properties. I offered Amanda and Justin drinks, which they accepted with noticeable tension. "So," Amanda began after taking a fortifying sip of wine, "when were you going to tell us about all this?" She gestured broadly, encompassing not just the room but the entire lifestyle change. "I did tell you," I replied calmly. "I mentioned selling the company and moving to California. I invited you for Christmas." "You said you bought a lovely home," she countered, "not a $12 million mansion on the beach. There's a difference, Dad." I studied her face, so like her mother's when preparing for confrontation. Would it have made a difference? Would you have accepted my invitation if you'd known the house was this size or cost this much? Justin shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. Of course it would have made a difference, he said, then caught himself. I mean, not because of the money, but because it's such a significant life change. I appreciated his attempt at diplomacy, but couldn't let the moment pass. Is it? I've been successful in business for decades. You knew that even if we didn't discuss specifics, what's changed is not my circumstances, but their visibility. Amanda set her glass down with more force than necessary. Are you seriously suggesting we only wanted to visit because we saw how wealthy you are now? That we're somehow gold digging? I'm not suggesting anything, I replied, keeping my voice even. I'm asking honest questions. For 15 years, I've been invited to your home for exactly 2 hours on Christmas Day. I've been permitted brief visits for birthdays and school events. When I invited you here, before anyone knew about the house, I was told you were too busy and that you only wanted close family around. The direct quote from her text message hit its mark. Amanda flushed, looking down at her hands. That was Mom's wording, she said quietly. She was helping me respond to everyone's holiday invitations. You're 39 years old, Amanda, I said gently. At what point do you take responsibility for your own relationship with me, independent of your mother's influence? Justin cleared his throat. If I may, he interjected, I think there's been a lot of miscommunication over the years. Elizabeth has always been protective of her version of events. I've wondered sometimes if we were getting the full picture. Amanda shot him a look of betrayal. My mother didn't lie about Dad choosing work over family. He was never home. He missed my recitals, my swim meets, parent-teacher conferences. That's true, I acknowledged, feeling the old familiar pain of those accusations. I worked too much and was absent for important moments. I made mistakes that I've regretted every day since. But after the divorce, I tried to rebuild our relationship. I called every Sunday for 5 years, even when the calls lasted less than 5 minutes. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts, paid for your college education, attended your graduation even though I was seated in the back row away from your mother's family. I leaned forward, meeting my daughter's eyes directly. I have never stopped trying to be part of your life, Amanda, but at some point, it became clear that I was only allowed to participate on very specific terms, always as an outsider, never fully included. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes, surprising me. It had been many years since I'd seen my daughter cry. You don't understand how hard it was, she said, her voice breaking. After you left, Mom was devastated. She needed me. Every time I spent time with you or seemed happy to hear from you, it hurt her. It felt like I was betraying her. I never left you, Amanda, I said firmly. Your mother and I divorced. It was painful and difficult for everyone, but I never stopped being your father or wanting a relationship with you. Justin reached for Amanda's hand. I've said this before, honey. Your mom put you in an impossible position. You were 17, not a therapist or a marriage counselor. It wasn't fair to make her emotional well-being your responsibility. Amanda pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. So now, you're both against me? Great. I rose as well, not approaching but ensuring she could see my face clearly. This isn't about being against anyone. It's about honesty. After too many years of carefully managed interactions, I have never stopped loving you, Amanda. Not when you sided with your mother during the divorce. Not when I received the wedding announcement after the ceremony. Not when I was seated at the edge of every family photo. And not when you texted that I shouldn't come for Christmas. Tears were flowing freely down her cheeks now. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. Mom has always been so insistent about how things should be, who belongs where. She's been the center of my life, my rock. I know, I said gently, and I've never tried to damage your relationship with her. But perhaps it's time to consider whether her version of events is the only valid one, and whether her needs should always determine your choices. Justin stood, placing a supportive hand on Amanda's shoulder. I think we all need some time to process. It's been a long day with the travel and everything. I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his suggestion. Of course, we have 5 days together. There's no rush to resolve 15 years of complications in one evening. As they turned to leave, Amanda paused, looking back at me with red-rimmed eyes. One question. All those people in the Christmas videos, who exactly were they? Friends, business associates, and several families going through difficult times who needed a special Christmas, I answered honestly. After being told I wasn't welcome at your celebration, I decided to create one where everyone was welcomed. She flinched slightly at my words but nodded. Good night, Dad. Good night, Amanda. I'm glad you're here. After they retired to their suite, I remained in the living room, watching the moonlight on the restless ocean and reflecting on the conversation. There had been pain, certainly, but also the first real honesty between us in years. Whether that would lead to healing or further estrangement remained to be seen, but at least the carefully maintained facade had finally cracked. In the quiet darkness, I allowed myself to hope. Not for instant reconciliation or easy answers, but for the possibility that truth, however uncomfortable, might clear a path forward. Tomorrow would bring a new day, and perhaps a new beginning. The following morning brought brilliant sunshine and the excited voices of Jack and Lily discovering the infinity pool. I found them already swimming under Justin's supervision when I emerged for my morning coffee on the terrace. Grandfather Bradford, Lily called, waving enthusiastically from the water. This pool is amazing. It looks like it goes right into the ocean. I waved back, noticing how much more animated she seemed away from the constraints of our usual brief visits. That's why they call it an infinity pool, I explained, walking closer. Would you like breakfast out here by the pool? Chef Miguel can make chocolate chip pancakes. Their enthusiastic approval made me smile. Justin looked up from his phone, offering a tentative nod of greeting. Amanda's still sleeping, he said. The time change hit her pretty hard. No rush, I assured him. We have all day. The morning unfolded with a relaxed rhythm unlike any previous time with my grandchildren. Free from the strict schedule of our usual visits, they began to show me their true personalities. Jack, it turned out, was passionate about marine biology and full of questions about the local sea life. Lily revealed herself as a budding artist, fascinated by the play of light on water and constantly asking to take photos with Justin's phone. I accompanied them down the private path to the beach, carrying towels and a cooler of drinks while pointing out local landmarks. Walking beside Jack, I was struck by how tall he had grown, his lanky frame already promising the height that ran in my side of the family. Dad says you sold your company for a lot of money, he commented with the directness of a 10-year-old. Were you rich before too? The question made me chuckle. I was comfortable, I explained, choosing my words carefully. I worked very hard for many years building my business. The sale was much larger than I expected, which is why I could afford this house. He nodded, processing this information. Mom always said, you work too much. That's why you weren't around. The innocent repetition of Amanda's narrative stung, but I kept my expression neutral. I did work too much when your mom was growing up, I acknowledged. It's one of my biggest regrets. I thought I was providing for my family, but I missed too many important moments. Jack kicked at the sand as we walked. Mom works a lot too. She misses my swim meets sometimes. Adults often struggle to find the right balance, I said carefully. Your mom works hard because she cares about you and wants to provide good things for your family. Like you did? He asked, looking up at me with eyes that matched my own. Yes, I said softly. Like I did. When we returned to the house for lunch, Amanda was awake and sitting on the terrace with a cup of coffee. She looked tired, with shadows under her eyes suggesting a restless night. The kids love the beach, I commented, taking the seat across from her. Jack has your eye for detail. He noticed a sea lion I completely missed. A small smile flickered across her face. He wants to be a marine biologist. His room is full of ocean documentaries and shark posters. I could arrange a private tour at the Santa Barbara Marine Center while you're here, I offered. They have a research program he might find interesting. That would be nice, she replied, her voice tentative but warmer than the previous evening. Thank you. After lunch, I suggested showing Justin the home theater and game room while Amanda rested. As we walked through the house, I noticed Justin studying the photographs and art pieces with careful attention. "You've kept track of every milestone," he commented, pausing at a framed newspaper clipping of Amanda's company winning a regional business award 3 years earlier. "I don't think she knew you followed her career so closely." "Of course I did," I replied. "Just because I wasn't welcome at the table doesn't mean I stopped caring what was on it." Justin nodded thoughtfully. "I want to apologize for my part in all this," he said abruptly. "When Amanda and I first got together, I accepted Elizabeth's version of events without question. It seemed easier to follow the established patterns than to rock the boat." "You were protecting your relationship," I acknowledged. "I never held that against you." "Still," he insisted, "I should have pushed harder for a more balanced approach, especially after the kids were born. They've missed knowing you." Before I could respond, we heard the children's excited voices from the game room where they had raced ahead. Our conversation would have to wait, but Justin's words had offered unexpected hope. The afternoon passed pleasantly with board games and a movie in the theater room. I noticed Amanda watching from the doorway as I taught Lily how to play chess, the same way I had once taught Amanda herself. When our eyes met briefly, something shifted in her expression, a softening I couldn't quite define. Dinner that evening was more relaxed than the previous night. The children shared stories from school, and Justin discussed a work project that clearly excited him. Amanda remained quieter, but no longer radiated the defensive tension of the day before. After the children were in bed, I suggested a walk on the moonlit beach. To my surprise, Amanda agreed, leaving Justin to monitor the sleeping children. We walked in silence for several minutes, the sound of waves filling the space between us. "I found something in the library this afternoon," Amanda finally said. "A photo album I didn't see during the tour." I knew immediately which one she meant. "The blue leather one?" She nodded. It had every school photo, every newspaper clipping, programs from recitals I didn't even remember, birthday cards I sent you with barely a sentence written inside. Even my wedding announcement. "I kept everything," I said simply. "Why?" Her voice cracked slightly on the word. "Why bother when I gave you so little in return?" I stopped walking, turning to face her in the moonlight. "Because you're my daughter. Because loving you was never conditional on how much you loved me back." She looked away, toward the dark horizon where ocean met sky. "Mom told me you only started trying to be part of my life after the divorce because you felt guilty. That it was, what did she call it? Performative parenting." The cruelty of that characterization took my breath away. "Is that what you believe?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered. "I built my entire adult life around one version of our family story. If that version isn't true, what does that make me?" "Human," I answered gently. "It makes you someone who was put in an impossible position at 17 and did the best you could with the information you had." She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "I heard you earlier," she admitted, "with the kids by the pool. You didn't say anything bad about me or Mom. You could have, but you didn't." "That's not who I want to be," I told her. "I've never wanted to damage your relationship with your mother. I just wanted space in your life, too." Amanda wrapped her arms around herself, looking suddenly young and vulnerable. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if it can be fixed." I moved closer, not quite touching her, but close enough to offer comfort. "We don't have to fix 15 years in one visit. We can start with honesty and see where it takes us." "Mom's going to be so angry," she said, the fear in her voice revealing just how powerful Elizabeth's influence remained. "She still can't even hear your name without getting upset." "That's between you and her," I said firmly. "You're an adult with your own family now. You get to decide what relationships you want in your life, and on what terms." She nodded slowly, wiping away tears with the back of her hand. "The kids adore you already. Lily asked if we could come back in the summer when it's warmer." "You're all welcome any time," I assured her. "This house has plenty of room." We walked back toward the house in a different kind of silence, the air between us cleared of some long-standing toxins. Nothing was resolved completely, but a door had opened that had been firmly closed for 15 years. Inside, we found Justin waiting in the kitchen with hot chocolate prepared. "Everything okay?" he asked, studying our expressions. Amanda nodded, accepting the mug he offered. "Getting there," she answered, meeting my eyes briefly. "We're talking, really talking." Over the next 3 days, our interactions evolved with cautious but steady progress. The children, unburdened by the complicated history, simply enjoyed the freedom of the house and grounds. Lily attached herself to me completely, following me around with endless questions and observations. Jack maintained more distance but gradually sought me out for conversations about books and science. Amanda oscillated between openness and retreat, sometimes engaging fully, other times pulling back when emotions became too intense. During one difficult conversation in my study, she finally admitted the full extent of Elizabeth's campaign against me over the years. "She told everyone you abandoned us financially," Amanda confessed, looking ashamed. "But I found the support checks in her desk once. Every month, never late, more than the court required. She just wanted everyone to think you didn't care." The revelation wasn't surprising, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. "I'm sorry she put you in that position," I said, choosing my words carefully. "It couldn't have been easy growing up with that kind of anger." Amanda looked down at her hands. "It wasn't. It still isn't. Every holiday, every family gathering, there's always some comment about your father and how he prioritized money over us. I stopped defending you years ago because it just made things worse." "You shouldn't have had to defend me," I told her. "That wasn't your responsibility." On their last evening, I arranged a special dinner on the terrace, with the children's favorite foods and a small gift for each of them. As we finished dessert, Amanda cleared her throat, looking nervous but determined. "Dad," she began, using the familiar term she had avoided throughout the visit, "we've been talking, Justin and I. We'd like to come back for spring break in April, if that's okay with you. All of us, for the whole week." The simple invitation carried enormous weight. Not a grudging 2-hour Christmas visit, but a full week together. "I'd love that," I replied, working to keep my voice steady. "This house feels more like a home when you're all here." Later, after the children were in bed, Justin joined me in the library while Amanda finished packing. "I want you to know," he said without preamble, "that things will be different going forward." I should have stood up to Elizabeth's narrative years ago. "It's a complicated situation," I acknowledged. "She's still their grandmother and Amanda's mother." "Yes," he agreed, "but that doesn't give her the right to control Amanda's relationship with you or to keep the children from knowing their grandfather. We'll be having some difficult conversations when we get home." I felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected ally. "Thank you for your support, but please move carefully. This isn't about winning or losing, just about finding a healthier balance." Justin nodded. "Understood, but just so you know, I've already told Amanda we won't be spending every holiday at her mother's going forward. We're establishing our own traditions now, and you're part of them." The next morning brought emotional goodbyes at the airport, with promises of calls and video chats until their next visit. As they disappeared through security, I felt both loss and hope. The visit hadn't magically erased 15 years of distance, but it had created a foundation for something new. Driving back to the mansion alone, I reflected on how completely my life had changed in just a few short weeks. From the pain of exclusion had come unexpected joy, new friendships, and the beginning of family healing. The journey ahead would have challenges, particularly when Elizabeth discovered the shifting dynamics. But for the first time in years, I felt genuine optimism about my relationship with my daughter and grandchildren. That evening, I sat on my terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Thank you for everything, Dad. We made it home safely. Lily's already asking when we can go back to Grandpa's house by the sea." Grandpa, not Grandfather Bradford. A small change that represented something profound. The mansion around me, grand and beautiful as it was finally felt like it was becoming a home. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could hardly have imagined at the beginning of the year. Spring break in April turned into an extended summer visit in July, with Amanda, Justin, and the children spending 3 full weeks at the mansion. What began as tentative reconnection evolved into genuine comfort and growing affection. The transformation in my relationship with the grandchildren was perhaps the most remarkable. Jack and Lily now called me Grandpa without hesitation, eagerly sharing their achievements and interests during our weekly video calls. Lily sent me artwork she created at school, while Jack and I maintained an ongoing discussion about marine conservation projects in California. Amanda's journey was more complex but equally meaningful. Years of her mother's influence couldn't be undone overnight, but with each conversation and visit, she seemed to shed another layer of the narrative that had defined her understanding of our family. Sometimes the process was painful, leading to tearful late-night conversations on the terrace. Other times it brought laughter as we rediscovered shared traits and interests long buried under estrangement. "I didn't remember that you love mystery novels too," she commented during their summer visit, discovering my collection of first editions. "Mom always said you only read business books." These small revelations accumulated, gradually reshaping her perception not just of me, but of her own childhood memories. The process wasn't always linear. There were difficult phone calls and occasional retreats into old patterns, especially after visits with Elizabeth. But the overall trajectory was toward healing. Justin proved an unexpected source of stability throughout this transformation. His perspective as someone outside the original family dynamic, but deeply invested in its healthy resolution, provided balance during tense moments. He encouraged Amanda when her courage faltered and gently challenged her when old defensive habits emerged. "You're not betraying your mother by loving your father," I overheard him tell her during one particularly difficult evening. "There's room in your life for both relationships, even if they look different." Elizabeth, as expected, responded poorly to the changing dynamic. According to Amanda, the first hints of increased contact with me triggered accusations of disloyalty and emotional manipulation. When Amanda stood firm about their spring break visit, Elizabeth refused to speak to her for 2 weeks. The summer visit prompted a full-scale campaign of tearful phone calls and health complaints, designed to induce guilt. "She'll either adjust eventually, or she won't," Amanda told me, with newfound resolve during their summer stay. "I can't keep letting her control my family relationships. It's not healthy for anyone, including her." This emerging independence represented significant growth, though I was careful never to criticize Elizabeth directly. Her pain, however self-created, was real, and she remained an important part of Amanda's life. My goal was never to replace or diminish other relationships, only to claim the authentic connection that had been denied for so long. Beyond family healing, my life expanded in other meaningful ways. Many of the Christmas guests became regular visitors and genuine friends. Thomas relocated to Santa Barbara permanently, purchasing a modest home nearby. We began sailing together weekly, his wry humor and straightforward perspective a welcome addition to my life. Sarah and her twins visited during their school breaks, the boys growing more confident with each stay as their new stable life took root. I established college funds for Jack and Lily, along with educational trusts for Sarah's boys and several other children from the Christmas gathering whose families faced financial challenges. These investments in their futures gave me immense satisfaction, allowing me to share my unexpected fortune in ways that created lasting opportunity rather than temporary pleasure. The mansion itself evolved from impressive showplace to genuine home. I converted one wing into a learning center where local children could attend free educational programs during summer months. The pool and grounds hosted regular gatherings for families from the community center, while the home theater became the setting for twice-monthly movie nights, benefiting local charities. In early autumn, Amanda called with news that marked a significant milestone in our healing journey. "We've been talking about Christmas," she began, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness. "We'd like to spend it with you this year, if that's okay. All of us, for the whole week." "I'd love that," I replied, heart full at the simple invitation that represented so much more than a holiday visit. "Mom's not happy about it," she continued. She says we're choosing money over family, that we're just interested in your mansion and what you can give the kids. The irony of Elizabeth using the same accusation she had leveled against me wasn't lost on either of us. "How do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. "Sad that she sees it that way," Amanda answered with new confidence in her voice. "But I know the truth. This isn't about your house or money. It's about the relationship we should have had all along, the one I'm grateful we're building now." As December approached, I reflected often on the profound lesson this year had taught me. The painful exclusion that began with Amanda's text had ultimately created space for authentic joy and connection. By refusing to remain in the role of supplicant, always grateful for whatever crumbs of family relationship were offered, I had created something new and genuine. The wealth from selling my company hadn't created these changes, but it had revealed truths that might otherwise have remained hidden. Money doesn't change who people are, but it often exposes their true priorities and values. Some relationships had proven conditional, based on convenience or obligation rather than genuine connection. Others, including many formed during that first Christmas gathering, demonstrated that authentic bonds could form quickly when built on mutual respect and openness. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned that self-respect and boundaries weren't selfish but essential. For years, I had accepted whatever terms were offered for access to my family, believing that something was better than nothing. That passive acceptance hadn't served anyone well, least of all Amanda, who had been allowed to maintain a distorted understanding of our family history, rather than confronting difficult truths. The greatest gift I could offer my daughter wasn't financial security or a beautiful home to visit, but the example of living authentically and refusing to be defined by others' narratives. By creating my own joy rather than waiting for permission to participate in hers, I had inadvertently shown her a path toward her own independence and healing. As Christmas approached, I found myself sitting on the terrace one evening, watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant colors. The mansion glowed with early holiday decorations, prepared for the family gathering that would truly make it a home. My phone chimed with a message from Amanda, confirming their arrival details and sharing Lily's lengthy list of activities she had planned for our time together. I smiled at the ordinary family communication that had once seemed an impossible dream. The journey from rejection to reconciliation hadn't been simple or straightforward, but sitting there in the gathering twilight, I felt profound gratitude for every step of the path, even the painful ones. The mansion around me represented not just financial success but a second chance at what mattered most. By refusing to be a doormat in my own family and choosing self-respect, I had ultimately created space for genuine healing. Sometimes the deepest wounds need to be fully exposed before they can properly mend. If you've ever faced rejection from those you love most, I hope my story offers some comfort. Creating your own joy doesn't mean giving up on important relationships, but it might mean stepping back from unhealthy patterns to build something new and authentic. Family is precious, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your dignity or truth. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members you love? How did you balance self-respect with the desire to maintain those relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible, even after years of pain. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the best family traditions are the new ones we create ourselves.